In the throbbing veins of New York City, where the skyline clawed at the heavens like a lover's desperate grasp, and the streets hummed with the electric buzz and endless desire, Elena Vargas navigated her world with the grace of a flame dancing in the wind. At 28, she was an artist whose skin bore the permanent kiss of pigments, crimson reds that evoked the heat of flushed cheeks, indigo blues that whispered of midnight longings, and sun-kissed golds that promised ecstasy just beyond reach. Her Brooklyn studio was a sanctuary of sensual chaos. Canvases leaned against walls like spent lovers, brushes scattered like discarded clothing, and the air thick with the musky scent of turpentine and inspiration. Elena's body moved with a rhythmic sway, her curves accentuated by paint-splattered jeans that clung to her hips, her full lips often parted in concentration as she poured her soul onto the fabric of her art. She craved connection, the kind that set her nerves alight, but her flings were fleeting touches, fingers grazing skin, breaths mingling briefly before fading into the night. Across the glittering divide, in Manhattan's steel and glass citadels, Alexander, Alex Thorne, commanded his domain with the precision of a predator. 32 years old, he was the CEO of Thorne Industries, where algorithms danced at his whim and fortunes rose and fell on his word. His body was sculpted from hours in private gyms, broad shoulders straining against bespoke suits, a jawline sharp enough to cut through hesitation, and eyes of piercing blue that held the intensity of a storm about to break. Yet beneath the veneer of power, Alex yearned for authenticity, a touch that wasn't calculated, a gaze that saw through his armor to the vulnerable heat within. Their destinies intertwined on a sultry autumn evening in October 2024, rain slicking the streets like a lover's sweat. Elena had slipped into a charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, her black dress a second skin that traced the swell of her breasts and the curve of her thighs, her dark hair tumbling like a cascade of midnight silk. The air was heavy with perfume and anticipation, crystal chandeliers casting golden light that danced on exposed collarbones and whispered promises. She felt the weight of stairs, her pulse quickening as she sipped champagne, its bubbles fizzing against her tongue like tiny explosions of desire. Alex moved through the crowd like a shadow, his cologne a subtle blend of sandalwood and spice that lingered in his wake. Bored with the polished small talk, his eyes locked onto her, Elena, entranced before a sprawling abstract painting, her body swaying slightly as if the colors caressed her. The artwork's bold swirls mirrored the turmoil in his chest, chaotic reds bleeding into soothing purples, evoking the rush of blood and the sigh of release. He approached, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her. Beautiful, isn't it? The way the colors entwine, like bodies lost in each other. She turned, her chocolate brown eyes meeting his, a spark ignited that made her skin tingle. Up close, he was intoxicating, his scent enveloping her, his presence commanding yet tender. "It's alive," she breathed, her voice husky, pulsing with emotion. The artist knew the fire of passion, the ache of longing. "I'm Alex," he said, extending a hand, his fingers warm and firm as they brushed hers, sending a jolt straight to her core. "Elena, just Elena." Her palm lingered in his, the contact electric, as if their skins recognized each other from a forgotten dream. They talked as the night deepened, the gala's murmurs fading into a distant hum. She described her art with animated gestures, her hands painting invisible strokes in the air, her laughter a melodic cascade that made his heart race. He shared fragments of his life, the isolation of power, the craving for something raw and unfiltered. Their knees brushed under the table, a deliberate accident that made her thighs clench with unspoken want. By evening's end, phone numbers exchanged like secret vows, and as they parted, his hand cupped her cheek, thumb tracing her lower lip. The kiss that followed was tentative at first, lips brushing like silk on skin, then deepening, tongues exploring with a hunger that left them breathless, her body pressing against his, feeling the hard planes of his chest, the heat radiating from him. That night, Elena tossed in her sheets, the memory of his mouth on hers replaying in vivid detail. Her fingers trailed down her body, imagining his touch, her breath hitching as desire pooled between her legs. Across the city, Alex paced his penthouse, the city lights blurring through rain-streaked windows, his body taut with need. For the first time, he felt the pull of something profound, a flame that promised to devour him whole. The morning sun filtered through Elena's curtains like a lover's gentle caress, but her phone's buzz shattered the calm. Alex's text. "Coffee? I know a spot where the views rival the passion in your eyes." Her heart fluttered, fingers trembling as she replied, "Let's see if they can match." They met on a rooftop cafe, the autumn breeze teasing her hair, carrying the scent of fresh baked pastries and his cologne. Central Park sprawled below, a tapestry of fiery leaves that mirrored the heat building between them. Over steaming lattes, their conversation wove like threads of silk, her teasing his corporate rigidity, him admiring her untamed spirit. "You're a wildfire," he murmured, his foot sliding against hers under the table, the contact sending shivers up her spine. "And you're an inferno waiting to erupt," she countered, her hand reaching for his, fingers intertwining. The touch was bold, public, his thumb stroking her palm in slow circles that made her pulse throb in intimate places. As they left, he pulled her into an alley, pressing her against the cool brick wall. His lips claimed hers with urgency, hands roaming, fingers splaying across her back, pulling her closer until she felt his arousal against her thigh. She gasped into his mouth, her nails digging into his shoulders, the taste of coffee and him intoxicating. "I want you," he growled, his breath hot against her neck, teeth grazing her earlobe. Their dates became a symphony of senses. Dinners and dimly lit bistros where candlelight flickered on their skin and forks clinked like preludes to passion. One evening, along the Hudson, the water lapped rhythmically as they walked hand in hand, his arm slipping around her waist, thumb brushing the underside of her breast through fabric. She leaned into him, inhaling his scent, her body awakening to every nuance. Elena drew him into her realm, underground art shows where bodies pressed close in crowded spaces, the air thick with sweat and creativity. He introduced her to opulence, private jets where they kissed at cruising altitude, his hands exploring under blankets, fingers dipping beneath her waistband to tease her wetness. "Elena," she moaned, her head falling back as pleasure built. But it was in her studio where the flames roared highest, paint tubes scattered, canvases witnessing their union. He arrived unannounced, finding her in a tank top and shorts, skin smudged with color. "You're a masterpiece," he said, closing the distance. Their kiss was fervent, tongues dueling as he lifted her onto a cable, paints clattering to the floor. His hand stripped her slowly, savoring the reveal, peeling fabric from her breasts, thumbs circling hardened nipples until she arched, whimpering. She tugged at his shirt, buttons popping, her mouth on his chest, tasting salt and skin. He knelt, parting her thighs, his breath hot against her core, before his tongue delved in, lapping with expert strokes that made her cry out, fingers tangling in his hair as waves of ecstasy crashed over her. When he entered her, it was slow at first, their eyes locked, bodies sinking in a rhythm of gasps and moans. "You feel so good," he groaned, thrusting deeper, her legs wrapping around him, heels digging into his back. Sweat slicked their skin, paints transferring like war paint, marking their passion. In the afterglow, limbs entangled, he traced her curves with feather-light touches. "I've never felt this," he confessed, voice raw. "Nor I," she whispered, tears of overwhelming emotion tracing her cheeks. But doubt flickered. What if the world extinguishes us? His kiss silenced her, fierce and reassuring. "We'll burn brighter." Whispers circulated in his elite circles, jealous eyes on the bohemian temptress. Victoria, his ex-fiancée, a vision of icy beauty with platinum hair and sharp features, seethed from the shadows, her own desires twisted into vengeance. Elena's past haunted her too, nights of bruises from a former lover, his grip like chains on her spirit. In dreams, it resurfaced, but Alex's embrace chased the ghosts away. Winter's chill couldn't quench their fire. Christmas in Paris was a dream woven from lights and longing. The Seine's waters reflected the Eiffel Tower's glow as they strolled, his coat enveloping her, his hand slipping inside to caress her side. In their suite, overlooking the city, they undressed slowly, his fingers unzipping her dress, letting it pool at her feet, his mouth following the path down her spine, nipping at her hips. They made love with abandon, her on top, riding him with rolling hips, breasts bouncing as he gripped her thighs, thumbs pressing into soft flesh. "Elena," he panted, his release building as she clenched around him, her own climax shattering like stars, cries echoing off velvet walls. Tears mingled with sweat, emotions raw, love declared in whispers, bodies spent in tender holds. Back in New York,